Have you ever felt frustrated by some of the choices your daughter is making right now? And you can't believe she spoke to you that way, or never have you ever experienced doing that to your own parents? And you're kind of sick of her entitled attitude? Well, today we're going to talk about my upbringing, and this is a little more personal for me. We're going to talk about my upbringing and some cultural clashes I had as a teen with my own parents. And the reason why I share this today, why this is a little more personal, is because my hope is that you walk away really with a better understanding of your daughter, whether it be, you're having some cultural differences, frustrated by cultural differences, or even generational differences between you and your daughter. If you are frustrated with how to get your teenage daughter to open up to you because all you want is to connect with her as you once did, you're in the right place. Hey, I'm Jeannie Baldomero, a former rebellious teen, now mom of 3 young adults, educator, and the mom mentor, equipping you to create open communication with your girl so she can come to you about anything, even if she's scared. So grab your oat milk latte, breathe, and let's do this together.
Oh my goodness, yes, definitely worth its weight in gold, I think, especially for what I needed. Very, very grateful and thankful that I found it, because, it really was by chance, but it was good and definitely powerful and has given me some good tools. The big wins were I could use my love of art to get to know them better. That was a really big win for me. It helped me dive into my creative side as well. So I had some issues with my 16-year-old at the time, where, I felt she was being a little bit more secretive, lying a little bit, blatant lying and things like that. So I wanted to understand. So your end goal is to have a very good relationship with your children as they're adults, right? And not think about the here and now, because yes, this is a difficult season, but if your end goal can be that you've got a good relationship with them in the future, that's a win.
Hey mama, this is my invitation to you. Join me in the Talk to Your Teen Girl framework. It's a 6-week course that will get you started in creating a space for your teen to feel safe and respond in a way where your teen girl will feel heard and understood. You are building trust so you can get what you want most from your daughter, and that is to come to you about anything, even if she's scared. So head on now to talktoyourteengirl.com. That's talktoyourteengirl.com. Okay, today you're going to get to know me a little bit more. If you've been a longtime listener, you probably heard pieces of my story. I actually come from a military background. My parents were both born in the Philippines. Grew up, raised there as adults, went to college there. Actually, my dad attempted college, but decided to join the U.S. Navy, which brought our family and future generations, like my kids and their kids, to America. It was the American dream that I know a lot of Filipinos at the time were pursuing, was living really a better life here in America. And I truly can say, if I were to ask my parents, that they are living a better life here. I mean, a lot of hard work, but that hard work has paid off over years of their sacrifice. Because of that, because of what they wanted to pursue for their family and their dreams, my brother and I didn't grow up learning our native language. We were spoken to in English. We were expected to speak in English. So my parents didn't really teach us their native language or their national language. I understand it just because I simply was listening to it. I grew up listening to them talk, all the adults talk. But when it came to talking, to us, it was in English, and they expected us to talk back in English because we were their bridge. We were the communication to this new culture that they were establishing their new life in. And it gives me, as an adult, it gives me a clearer picture of why they decided to do it. Maybe you're listening here and you're a first generation immigrant from another country and truly wish that for your children to speak only the English language. Or maybe you're like me, a second generation, grew up here and only learned the language learned the English language, wishing that I had learned our native language. But it gives me an idea of what my parents had expected of us was to assimilate, to blend in and not stick out, right? Because they didn't want us to feel like an outsider, quite frankly, and to really speak the language well so that it sounded like we are articulate and educated. And I'm super grateful for them pursuing this dream of theirs for not only us, but for my children and their children's children. But because of this, there was lots of misunderstanding and tensions between me and my parents. I can't speak for my brother because my brother has his own experience, but this is my experience with my parents. The clash of two cultures. You know, now as a grown up, I have more experience, a little more wisdom, and a lot more ability to switch perspectives, right? A lot more maturity to switch perspectives. And what I've noticed was that as a grown up now, I'm very appreciative of what my parents have done. They, had a lot of sacrifice. They sacrifice, on their part, a lot of sacrifice. They left their families. They left all they knew, their comfort, everything that they knew to be since childhood. They picked up and left to a different country. And two, I know it probably was pretty scary for them, not knowing anyone, no relatives, not even a friend. Maybe my dad had a few shipmates in the Navy, but really transplanting themselves into a new country with a whole set of new rules, cultural rules, right? Let alone laws. And then, they had to navigate trying to figure things out on their own, befriending people that knew how things worked here. So they were paving the way for future generations here. And three, they were learning to fit in without losing themselves. Being in a different culture without losing entirely who they were and who they know they are to be, just some cultural traditions, the way they think, being able to adjust. So, which thinking back, there was so many reasons for my parents to be frustrated with me when I had my attitude and I displayed disobedience and disrespect and ungratefulness, right? I was ungrateful in their eyes. And I'm sure it caused a lot of frustration and tension on me. They were frustrated with me not knowing and understanding what they are currently going through and what they had to go through, right? That put a lot of strain on our relationship. The cultural gap and the sacrifices made for me and my brother really hovered over our head, right? And to say it was fair or unfairly put on our heads, that's just based on perspective, right? For my parents, it was, this is why I do what I do. This is why I expect you to do the things that you do. For me as a kid, it was, I didn't ask for this, right? And that's maybe the type of struggle that you're going through with your own daughter and your relationship. However, because they hovered this, huge expectation on us of what their dream was for us, I kind of felt a sense of shame for not living up to these expectations when I myself didn't even really understand who I was at the time. I'm talking about my 13-year-old self. So if I were to go back to my 13-year-old self, I think these are, or 13-year self time, right? These are some of the things I wish my parents knew during that time. That maybe things would have been a little bit different between the three of us. And then why am I sharing this now? Because maybe you're going through that yourself. Maybe it's a cultural gap too. Maybe you migrated here and now are experiencing a cultural difference and how it's frustrating for your daughter not to understand, right? Or maybe it's a generational thing, right? Gap. My husband and I talk about it all the time. I'm a Gen Xer, right? I'm a Gen Xer. And if you're a Gen Xer, woohoo, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We figure things out. We were problem solvers. We were the latchkey kids. Our parents were the boomers that, worked hard. Family was their reason, but family time wasn't necessarily important. It was providing for the family. So we were the generation of latchkey kids. We got into a lot of trouble. We wanted to figure things out. We were the generation that provided all the technology that we have today because we just are that. Okay, not to say that I'm biased with that generation. I think Gen X is the best generation. But because of that, which, actually comes to my point right now about our Gen Zers and even our Gen Alphas who are now entering the teen stage, how we can compare our own upbringing to their current upbringing now, how we can call them entitled or ungrateful because our experiences were different, so much different, and our mindset was so much different from theirs. And the reality is, I think back in my own time that my parents had the same thing for me, that they grew up a different way. They were expected to react a certain way. They were expected to be grateful, right? Yet, and they had those same expectations on me, which caused a lot of tension and a lot of frustration and it also widened the gap between us, right? So these are the three things I kind of wish my parents knew about me at 13. And I'm hoping that as you listen to these three wishes, maybe you're in that current season and a little frustrated and maybe almost have given up because you just can't relate and the gap of communication or relationship or connection is getting wider and wider because of maybe generational reasons or even cultural reasons. I want you to listen to this. It's not for me to shame you and say, well, you should do better. No, believe me, I of all people have made many mistakes and I'm learning and growing. But it's a way for us to maybe better understand where your daughter is at this time so that we, mamas, can reshift our perspective outside of what we know for ourselves and understand where your daughter is right now. Okay? So take this with a grain of salt, hopefully, or maybe you can help, utilize these three wishes that I wish my parents knew about me when I was 13 to help with your gaps that you might have right now with your daughter. So number one thing I wish I knew my parents knew about me was what I was going through has nothing to do with my ingratitude of their sacrifice. That what I was going through as a teenager has nothing to do with my ingratitude of their sacrifices. I was 13, probably didn't really understand how much sacrifice they had made. I mean, I was reminded of it, but it was hard for me to really truly understand until I was an adult. But what I was going through as a teenager had nothing to do with the fact that I was ungrateful for the food that was on the table, the private school that they sent me, and the fact that we live in a country that was so much, I guess, provided so much more opportunities than the country they came from. So I wish they understood that what I was going through had nothing to do with my ungratefulness. And if this applies to you, that what your daughter is going through right now, the changes she's going through, the hormones she's going through, she does not exactly understand what is happening from your perspective, right? We want her to learn to shift perspective, but right now she's so involved in who she is and what she's going through and how it's impacting her life that she's not really concerned with what you had sacrificed this far for her. And I hope you don't take that personally because that is what is happening. And so it has nothing to do with her ingratitude. And sometimes we can mix that up. And I know my parents had mixed that up with not being grateful for what they have provided. It has everything to do with what she's going through and that her little world or big world to her right now is affecting her attitude, her decisions, her insecurities, but it has nothing to do with all the things you have done for her this far. Number two, my parents knew at 13 was that I struggled with being judged for growing up in a culture that was different from theirs. So I wish they knew that I felt I felt judged for growing up in the very country and culture they wanted me to grow up in. And to be able to express that is very difficult at 13. To express that our culture growing up here is not a duplicate of the culture that she grew up back in the Philippines. And I wish my mom would understand that. And one thing that I would advise is just understanding the times now. Not living in the past, and I've been guilty of that, not living in the past, but living in the now. What is your daughter exposed to now? It's social media. She has a lot of distractions going on. TikTok, Instagram. I mean, those are the makeup tutorials on YouTube. Those are the things that are distracting her now. And we can't say when I grew up, I never did all that stuff, because we weren't exposed to it. We didn't even have it. There was no YouTube. There was no iPhone, right? We didn't have that. We had different distractions, right? So we have to go back to that and say, although I didn't grow up in that same culture back then, right? And trying to understand the culture she's growing up now, so that you can shift your perspective to understand how you can relate to her better, right? So I hope that makes sense. Okay, so I wish my mom had understood my struggle with being judged for growing up in a culture different from hers. Number three, one thing I wish that she understood or they understood is I won't understand everything that you've done for me or they've done for me until I am older. That the expectation of understanding the struggles, the grown-up struggles, the grown-up sacrifices, the grown-up hustle, right? In order to provide for your family. I did not understand as a 13-year-old. Your daughter is not going to understand as a teenager. She, again, is concerned with her world, what's going on in her mind, what's going on in her circles. That what you're doing for her, quite honestly, is hard for her to understand, maybe even developmentally, right? I didn't really understand it until I was a lot older and was starting to experience what adulting was like, right? So it's an unfair expectation or unfair responsibility or obligation on your daughter, right? And so why I mention that is because I know that a lot of frustration that came out of my mom was the fact that, you don't know how much I sacrificed for you to be here. And quite frankly, as a 13-year-old, I didn't. Did I care? I don't know if I did, quite honestly, because I was so involved in the things that I cared for. And if that helps you shift your perspective, because it sounds almost rude, but that's the reality of teenage stage. Maybe that's the gap that you can work on, is how can we help our daughters understand everything you've done for them, not out of guilt or shame or blame, but out of pure love, right? And there's a healthier way to do that than trying to put that type of pressure of your decisions for her future on her, right? So I hope that has helped you, Mama, help you understand. Maybe there are some frustrations you're having that are culturally, there's a cultural gap, there's a generational gap between you two, that the point is to understand where she is at this moment. Maybe you can relate to some of the things that she's going through because it may be a different culture, a different time, but the same feelings of what you've gone through as a teen might be similar. But to also understand where she's at right now, not to mistaken it for entitlement, not to mistaken it for ungratefulness, and not to be mistaken for the fact that she doesn't care about how much you sacrificed for her because of her attitude. But it's really to kind of let go of that and to understand who she is and what her world is now so that you can relate to her, right? We meet her where she's at. We can't expect her to come to our level and understand our experiences when she hasn't at all. I would never know until this day, understand the type of experiences my parents made, the type of fears, the type of specific experiences, right? Traveling from the Philippines and making that huge move to the United States. I would not know because I have never experienced that. But to be able to share some stories, just to share simply to give some insight would be wonderful, but not to use that as a weapon to, correct your daughter, right? So I hope this has helped you a little bit, Mama. This is not at all to shame you because there are some cultural differences and definitely generational differences, but it's to help you understand your daughter where she is right now and the type of things by me sharing my story I wish my parents knew at the time in the middle of the grind and in the middle of the trenches of me being a teenager, that these cultural differences, the gaps that have been put into our lives can be, narrowed, right? We can fill in those gaps when we learn to understand our daughters a little bit better in the now. Mamas, you got this. There is hope. There is, we just need to get through this season. There's a lot of fun in it on the other end. I have a great relationship with my mom and dad. One, because now I'm much more mature. And two, because of a lot of forgiveness and healing between the two of us or the three of us. And I just pray for you right now in the moment as you're in this season that there are times where you can shift, right? You can shift to fight for your relationship when it really, really does matter. And just know that she really does need you in this season, even if she's not acting like it. So Mama, if you feel like, gosh, I wish I knew better ways to connect with my daughter a little bit more, and it really does start with open communication, I want you really to take the time to go to talktoyourteengirl.com. Just read about what that course is and see if that is a good fit for you. If this is the time for you to take the action, take the time to learn exactly what needs to happen to tweak, because you might be a little confused after even listening to this episode about exactly, well, how do I change my perspective? How do I reach her where she's at? Talk to Your Teen Girl framework will help you unlock some of these things that help, one, identify the relationship gap between you two, and two, how to create that healthy relationship between the two of you by lessening that gap. Okay? Go to talktoyourteengirl.com, and then I will see you next week. Hey friend, if this podcast inspired you or encouraged you or helped you in any way, I'd love for you to share it. You can screenshot this episode and share it in your stories on social media or text it to a friend who can use the support. It's the best way you can thank me. I want to let other mamas know they are not alone. I'd love to stay connected with you. You can find me at raisingherconfidently.com. Until next time, live full of grace, Jeannie.